Hey, Eloise Ansel here. I'm back with Claudia for a third video, and we're talking about biogeometry. But today we want to talk about what I've named it smart living because because in this day and age, in the life that we live in the modern world, we have a lot of smart devices and a lot of EMFs and all kinds of things. And I think it's a very valid thing to talk about, especially because biogeometry can and we've touched on this in some of the other videos, and if you haven't watched them, go watch those first. But the way that we interact with the world and the environment is so key, and biogeometry can really support that. So I thought this might be a good topic.
Yeah, thank you, Eloise, for bringing up this topic because it is so important. I mean, we talk about resonance and biogeometry, right? So the whole idea is if I sometimes talk to people saying, switch off your smartphone at night, and they would say, why? And I'm like, okay, this person is not wired maybe to understand what I'm about to say. But at the same time, a lot of people have gathered now that there may be some kind of stress factors involved in always having to be connected, wanting to be connected, never missing out, and so forth. There's actually diseases now called like this. I mean, I found it fascinating. Anyway, so I don't even know where to start because there's so much to cover in smart homes, smart technology, smart this. It sounds really smart, not have to do anything. And
So why it's called smart.
but I'm not sure how smart it is, or we are not sure how smart it is, but what we can actually observe. And I think I have to start with the buildings rather than the technology aspect of that is that a lot of things have changed since the origin of mankind.
Yeah.
So in the original days, people were, hunters and gatherers living in caves, living in tents, and so forth. So, but how did they select their spaces? We don't know today. We can only assume, right? But then when people started to go into settlements, they had specific rituals, especially when they were building the first houses, which were there more for a permanent level, so they would always look for what today is called a sacred spot. So they would observe nature, they would test certain things with meat and animals and milk and so forth. Then would use the strongest power spot, as it's termed, for the community building or the sacred building, whatever that was present, depending on the location and the culture. And then the second strongest spot, because these are present in nature, everywhere, would be utilized for the person in charge of that community. So be it the king or an earl or just the mayor today, or the chief in indigenous cultures. And then the interesting part was they would connect these buildings, and then they would also connect those sacred energy pathways, which they were able to detect throughout let's call it the town. It wasn't necessarily a town as we see it today. And then in addition to that, they would also use radiesthesia to measure the grids of the earth, and also to measure where they should place a building and how the building should be arranged. So everything was kind of tailor-made to the energy qualities present in the environment. So it was kind of becoming a synchronized process. Okay, and then I don't know exactly when it started, but I was
when we ran out of room. I don't know.
No, but I call it when people were moving from the countryside more to towns, which were bigger and bigger and bigger, which is often related to the times of industrialization. And so people had no longer either the wisdom or the chance really to grid the land, map the land, and they just had to build. So they built on top of each other, and they built in areas where they may have not, shouldn't have built or wouldn't have built hundreds of years prior to that. And so about 100 something, I was thinking the year we are, nearly 100 years ago, sorry, I was too fast. It was observed that in a specific village or town in Germany, there were a lot of cancer cases. So there was this person, his name is von Pohl, And he did some research there, which later on was recognized in Berlin by the Cancer Research Hospital there, Charité, and and found out that 80% of the cancer cases were in 20% of the land, which was basically relating to what we call, or in radiesthesia, is called grid line crossings and so forth. So he could see that. In the other way, there was another village which had very low cancer rates. So he saw the same pattern basically, but obviously the energy quality of the land wasn't that bad. So that's part one. How do we build? Where do we build? Do we connect these buildings, which has also not been done for a few years, to the sacred power spots in the area? Do we still, maybe not having pathways and so forth, but do we still physically connect to sacred power spots, be it going into nature, be it going into churches or temples or, places like this? So a lot of times it's a disconnect, and that's what I have been seeing in society. So we have to see, this is in a way also part of the history of biogeometry, but also part of the history of why I, at least in my perception, think our society is in the state it is today, especially when it comes to health. So the technical advancement in healthcare, the machinery, the medication, the tests you do, when you find what problem, whatever, at a very early stage and so forth, it has advanced so much. But at the same time, the number of chronic diseases have also increased big time. And there is and I know this because I know a lot of medical doctors, there is no direct cure for that. So we're actually managing diseases now.
Yeah.
Okay? So for me, and I mentioned that in my introduction, for me, it has become so important not just to look at the individual and try to find the root cause of their problem. Yes. Which obviously you do when you're working as a holistic and integrative healthcare practitioner, but also say, okay, we can do so much in my clinic space right now, but when you go back to a home environment that is built at the wrong time, in the wrong spot, and so forth, so anyway, it's like, you don't want to do that. Now, I'm not telling this to my patients, out loud when they're with me, because then they don't want to go home anymore, and that's not helpful.
Yeah. We just have a house full of clients.
No. So anyway, so I find biogeometry, obviously there's other approaches. Actually, I also have some feng shui people who come to biogeometry classes, for example. I know people who've been working with placements and so forth, and they complement very well with biogeometry as well. So you can do a lot of things, but obviously it would be really great to start from scratch if you have them. A lot of people don't. And so this is where biogeometry came in a long time ago, and obviously has been trying to keep up with the development in modern society and also modern buildings. And then we come to the smart technology part. And so I feel it's important to understand, first of all, the history of that. So for me, I cannot just say, oh, yes, I treat you, but you live in an unhealthy space or you sleep in an unhealthy spot. So keeping that in mind. Now, in biogeometry, as we said also, before, we're trying to harmonize the whole home. But in the whole home, we have what is called energy. So let's start differently. Sorry. We have the building material. Okay. So, the house is built. I don't have much choice. But if I'm starting to build my house, then maybe I say, which material can I use? Now, one of my clients, I have to bring in this example because I think it's really helping to make a point here, had renovated or restorated a house that was already there, but he restorated it from the perspective of biobiology. So he is only helping building material. He detoxed as much as he could and so forth. And it was the house that is over 3 stories. And they realized they just could not sleep in that house. They were like really on edge. And so that he found out about biogeometry. So I came. And, when I'm working, I'm like matter of factly, I'm trying to be neutral, objective, and whatever. And I do my job. But nevertheless, my husband, who was with me at the time, assisting, because when you go up and down the stairs all the time, it's helpful to have an assistant. Anyway, he literally got a severe reaction. And he's
Wow.
not overreactive in whichever shape and form. So that house was really in need of harmonization. So we worked for a day, and and then there was, okay.
Hmm.
So the origin of we had to look at the energy keys of the house, but we also had to look at the relationship of the house with the outside environment. Okay, so once we had settled all of that, there was peace. And
Yeah.
so they said we did everything right, healthy materials, healthy, there's no Wi-Fi in the house, so all the whole work. Okay, so that is on the side. Now
Yeah.
coming
Because
back, yeah, sorry. No, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I mean, you can try and do everything right, but we're so limited sometimes in what we can do. It's but even when you try, there's still other factors coming
Yeah,
in
and you
from the
don't see it
environment.
because it's the invisible, right? And we
Yeah.
in BioGeometry, are able to make the invisible visible. It's not just about the visual, really, but and working with that through the qualitative approach, through the physics of quality. Okay, so coming back to the energy keys, so I'm just highlighting this in brief. So we have different energy keys, and I found that fascinating years ago. There was a photographic exhibition somewhere, I don't know where we traveled to, of indigenous tribes. And there was one specific tribe when they were still nomadic. So when they were settling or planning to settle somewhere, the chief shaman was then checking the area. And the first thing they would place was a door. No walls, nothing, just a door. And then the whole village, they would create their tents and everything, but in order to enter the village, they would go through that door. And that for me is so symbolic. So
Mm.
that's one of the first energy keys. It's the first energy key we meet when entering the house. So we're going to look at the main house door. Okay, so that's nothing to do with smart technology yet, but at the same time, a lot of people incorporate whatever, sensors, iris detectors, codes. So there's also electronics sometimes in a house door.
Yeah.
Then we have to look at the energy key, which means energy flow. Energy flows from A to B. And so it has a direction of movement. But on the sides, we have what we call energy qualities going to the left and to the right. And that should be balanced. With the optimal would be if the door is in the middle of a wall. And so we have no obstruction when the energy enters the room. But there's layers and layers. And again, we don't have to move doors. In biogeometry, you hardly ever have to structural alterations. You do energetic, qualitative alterations. Yes.
Yeah. We in the UK we have a lot of houses where the doors like in the corner and the whole like energy is just one way and
Exactly. And then you also have obviously the furniture in the room. So there's other aspects. Yeah,
mm,
but talking about the smart and modern lifestyle here, or the quality of living really, then I have to bring in the aspect of water. We have our water mains coming into the house, and then each country has different specifications. I know that. But then I have to see, okay, how is the water distributed in my house? So there is an energy key because it's the pipes flowing in my wall, which then, the water flows from here to there. I also have an energy key on the side. And that needs to be corrected and harmonized. So we go to the source. Then I have to see, okay, do I have a geyser, a boiler or something? The warm water. Do I have floor heating with water? All of those are being looked at. But like this, we're already covering the whole house. Now, in this modern day, we also have smart meters for electricity, for gas, for water, and
we've got the
so
fuse
those,
boxes, we've got so many things. Yeah.
yes. So we just with the basic foundation training, right? You learn to look at that, harmonize it, and test for yourself that it does make a difference in the qualitative wavelength measurements that you learn in class. And then we're also going to look at any technological device you may have, be it a television, computer, smartphone, and so forth. And we're trying to harmonize those to the best possible way. And this is where research came in, right? They had some experiments with Wi-Fi routers. It was quite fascinating to see how, for example, the brain tissue changed being in the vicinity of the router, an unharmonized router. Then you have a corrected building. Okay, so when we are able to start from scratch, and the brain tissue is no longer stressed, or we have a corrected building and also a harmonization directly, we layer, right, on the router, and again, the brain tissue changes. In addition to specific neurotransmitters, which are more relaxed versus growth related versus oxidative stress related, changing as well. So those are all studies that have been done, unfortunately or fortunately, with mice and rats. But this is how we learn, And yeah, so we look at all these smart devices, and that's the important part. We talk about electromagnetic frequencies. We talk about electromagnetic stress, or some people talk about electrosmog. And we have to understand that, again, this is the difference between qualitative and quantitative. I have measurement devices to measure electromagnetic frequency. So that's hertz. Okay. But when I do biogeometry, and I don't know whether you've ever done it, Eloise, but when I do biogeometry and I use my meter again, the hertz doesn't change. Whatever you want to call it, 5G and the microwave of radio and so forth, doesn't matter. I still have the same hertz. So the quantity hasn't changed. So people would say, hey, what did you do with biogeometry? But what's happening is so we have the physical wave. This is what's measured by these devices. Okay. So we have the physical electromagnetic wave, and that's what's measured by these devices that measure in the hertz range. But then we also have the non-electromagnetic frequency. And those devices cannot pick them up, but they are everywhere. And this is what's usually referred to as electrosmog. And this is what's being felt by the people sensitive to electronics. And so the interesting part is the electromagnetic frequencies are not what we're really going for. We're actually looking for the background smog, which is like a fog. If you have ever been in fog, you know how thick it can be. And with biogeometry and the BG3 energy quality, we're actually piggybacking on that. So we're infiltrating, for the lack of a better word, this harmful energy quality with harmonized and beneficial energy quality. So those smart homes become really smart homes and saturated in BG3. So even though our preference is always, my phone is harmonized, my router is harmonized and whatever, my preference would always be switch everything off when you sleep at night. Okay. That's always part one. You can do it kind of what we call the physical way. If you can move your bed, rather than just harmonizing your bed, if there's a stressful area, move your bed first and then still harmonize. But nevertheless, if everything is switched on and working, you're actually supported by that BB3 energy quality, which is representing a sacred power spot, or the energy quality of a sacred power spot. So this is, apart from energy keys, this is the key. The electromagnetic waves and the non-electromagnetic waves, which are also called compression waves. There's many names for this. Scalar waves. Yeah.
So living in a city and, being in a flat amongst other buildings, people above me and below me and everything. In a way, I've got to the point now where I don't want to turn my router off, because my router's kind of adding the happy vibe to the thing. If I turn it off, then I'm just covered with everyone else's.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's an interesting one, because I am currently in Malta and I live in the sixth floor. So I have the same like you have. And I was actually downstairs, which means 6 floors down. And I, for whatever reason, all of a sudden, because I'm usually not on mobile data, my phone beeped. And I'm like, why does my phone beep? So I checked, I was still on Wi-Fi and actually connected to my router 6 floors up. I was like, okay. So yes, so now I know when I go downstairs, so anyway, yeah, good point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I'm like, I want to kind of keep projecting that harmonized energy
Mhm.
into the local
Yeah.
smog. So
One of my one of my students last year, he was early 20s, and he had a lot of, I don't know how whether he ever slept or not, but he did so much between foundation and advanced training with the tools he had and the techniques he learned. And he shared some interesting stories. You know, it was literally just 4 weeks after. And he shared some interesting stories. One was under him was a family with a young baby. And ever since he did biogeometry in his flat, okay, incorporating whatever he learned in foundation, the baby's crying.
oh, that's so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of the side effects, like you say, the spillover going in all directions.
Yes, the spillover. Yeah. It's not something that you can always measure, but I've had lots of experiences with neighbors and things, and you're
Mhm.
like, is that the biogeometry?
Exactly. You know, you cannot prove it, but at the same time, might as
No.
well enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So yes, so it definitely has an effect on sleep. And like we said early on, you know, in society, there's, I mean, you know, coming from a healthcare background, I just see so much immune system dysfunction, sleeping dysfunction, inflammation, you know, even digestive disorders and so forth. But all these chronic disease states, and you can say they're definitely related to those electromagnetic stress factors. It may not be the only cause, but it's
Hmm.
definitely a big root cause. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not always causing everything, but for me, it's like amplifying problems that might be there
Yeah,
already.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Hmm.
Mm. So yeah, so if you want to come and take the foundation class, you'll be able to balance all the things in your home
Yeah,
and help
and
your
more,
neighbors out.
and more. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's beautiful. That's one reason why I decided I'd love to start teaching biogeometry, because I'm just one person, you know, and I enjoy it. But I think there's a
Mm.
big demand in the big wide world out there, and to think bigger picture, you know. So like Dr. Karim, you know, I see the book in your background. You called it in his first book, "Back to a Future for Mankind." Yeah, and
Mm.
that's what we have to work towards. You know, act locally,
Yeah,
think globally.
yeah, it's all this, like, for me, it's all that forgotten knowledge and wisdom that we lived by, that we're just, like you mentioned, being disconnected from it. We've just become so separate from the unseen world. We're just,
Mhm. Yeah, which also is part of the whole idea of biogeometry, you know, reconnecting, like you said, but also reconnecting to what is really truthful, what is really, does it mean to be healthy or look after yourself, or even to be in tune. Because in tune, somehow, you know, it's key, it's an interesting word used in many different areas. But in tune for me is also being in sync with the rhythms of life with inside my system, but also with the rhythms of nature, and
mm,
bringing back that harmony that nature really provides. You know, our mother planet is very strong and is a living being as well, and we have to understand. Talking inner environment, outer environment, individual and bigger society and family and so forth, but we are
mm.
actually living in the environment of Mother Earth. So we
Yeah, I
have
always
a
say
very
we're in the
important.
planet, not on it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So we do have a certain aspect, a big amount really of responsibility. And so we have to keep that in mind. And I love,
Mm.
you know, being able to do something, not just to stand back and say, I'm helpless.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to, for me, we have to take responsibility for our health. So this is a big
Yes.
part.
Yeah, definitely. And
Mm.
it's no use saying it's because, you know, okay, maybe because, but it's here now. You know, so I have to be very practical. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So anyway,
Cool.
biogeometry, once you have touched with biogeometry, you know, it's like life before biogeometry and life after. So definitely.
Yeah, it's never the same in a good way. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. So if you want to find out more about the Biogeometry Foundation class that we're running, check out below. If the class is passed, just get in touch anyway, because we may have other dates if you're watching this 10 years in the future. So So yeah, reach out and connect. But yeah, thank you so much, Claudia. This has been
Thank you,
fascinating.
Eloise. It was really beautiful chatting with you and sharing biogeometry in this
Yeah,
environment here. Okay.
cool. Excellent. And we hope to see everyone at the class. Everyone. Obviously, there's not room for everyone on the planet, but the people that will need to be there will be there.
Exactly. See you
Okay,
there.
right.
Thank you
Take
so much.
care.
Bye.
Bye.